yen fa ojomom na yen to abasa komu akona ba twebe mi ha yen fa ojomom na yen to abasa komu se kom na wa ya dia se kom adiesa na wonkoda makoso monkari anso odoti yes na ya body and a dream se kom na wa ya dia se kom adiesa na wonkoda makoso monkari anso odoti yes na ya body and a dream I done some cussing all night. Now you're drinking time to some of mine. I got 4 bed crying and sick guy. Everything me and try and do something. So don't say yo, my rapidity, I'm tired way. Me no back road. So don't say yo, my rapidity. Stay out there. I said 84 will be a win the original pay on. Me no way into me so se me through. I could come here higher. I just a woody a bunyano and ya duro. And I see a futuro, you know do a nyajo. And then you go bonku. Say me see my man for bomu quite more. Do when they will get the order to check come in a monchi monka. Just a grandma your Jenny America, the end of not in a home and walk quite fifi. Quite fifi. Stay out there. Booja. Stay out there. And you booja. Stay out there. So don't say yo. My rapidity. I'm tired way. Me no back road. So don't say yo. My rapidity. I'm tired way. Me no back road. I'm just so don't say yo. My rapidity. I'm tired way. Me no back road. I don't say no. My rapidity. See what get it. See what get it. See what get it. So don't say yo, my rapidity, I'm tired way, me no back road. So don't say yo, my rapidity, I'm tired way, me no back road.
It was a hot summer's day sea in the middle of the Sahara, all the tribes was packing up to head out yonder, to hang out in a spot that wasn't as hot as the last parking lot that was just as hot. At the watering hole at the palm tree oasis is where the camels would go to stuff their faces with H2O for their singular humps, for the long trip ahead over the vast triumph. But old Gritty Two Humps was a gluttonous llama, while everybody slumbered pre-Exodus. Overweight her humps with precious water, survival goods, mega stacked, made her sink into the. Now cruise control is how the camels rolled across the sandy sea. But Greedy G was loaded down heavy, wobbly at the knees. Greedy Two Humps. Taken up the slack, it fell into a slump. With the sun relentless and hot on her back, her distance receded and she fell way back. But the 1-2 hump camels who travel light left 2 humps behind, clear out of sight. Her greedy 2 humps, filled and heavy as lead, the herd had moved on and she was left for dead. The cackles of jackals that wore a faint sound began to get closer and gather round. And hyena laughter, always a bad sign, were now closing in on 2 humps behind. The buzzes that circle began to descend on 2 humps, the llama that sat in the sin. She became the feed for those in need. Survival goods, mega stacked, made her sink into the black.
Funk, thoughts deep, boys steeped in the depths that he sunk. Big stress, depressed in the middle of fall. Sky gray, high late in the thick of it all. I wonder, how long can a human survive just staying alive or carrying the rest of the tribe? Waiting for the day to arrive or struggling dies, and I be doing way, way more than getting by. So why? Cop myself a cup of coffee, sip of water in it softly, cleansing me of stress I hold. Myself a
Hello, everybody. It's Saturday, November the 28th at 8:23 Eastern Standard Time. We will be having our special guest, Sergeant George Lennon, come on in a bit, waiting for him to call in. However, at this time, I'd like to introduce the guy who has nothing better to do on Saturday nights and Tuesday nights. He refuses to be called his real name, but in any case, I'll do that. Dave Price, good to see you. How are you, Dave?
Always good, Brian. Although, we keep doing this thing and nobody ever sends me an idea of something to do. Like I keep hoping, as you introduced, I have nothing to do on Tuesday, Saturday. Actually, I don't really have anything to do on any day that ends with day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I'm hoping some people out there would say, hey, Dave, why don't you come count money with us and we'll give you half of it or something. But it just doesn't seem to work out. So what do I know, Brian? What do I know?
Okay. Well, Dave, of course, it's great seeing you. And
great being seen.
All right. And if you notice, folks, our display looks a little bit different today. We're working on that. We're trying to get everything cleaned up, and we're getting there. So eventually we'll have a format that hopefully looks like a professionally produced show. That's the goal.
Why, are we getting a new producer? I thought you were producing the show.
I am.
How are you going to make... Okay, never mind.
But we're getting there.
Brian, I want to give you kudos. For some people might say we're 23 minutes late, but actually we're, what would that be, 37 minutes early because we've been having a lot of problems. And it's not due to, well, it is 100% due to Brian, but I won't blame him, ladies and gentlemen. I just won't.
No, we're getting there. We're getting there, folks. We've had problems with audio and this and that. And really not necessarily our fault. We're using a beta program right now. And every once in a while, these things will happen. Last week and the week before, we had problems. But we're getting there. And I can promise you it's going to get better. I'd like to remind everybody that we are on different platforms, 5 exactly. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, VK, and Periscope. We just got some messages already. And if you're in your car, you have your telephone handy, you can just, if you have the Periscope app handy, you can listen to this just like a podcast. Also, I'm not all that familiar with Twitch, but that is a platform which we are on. And those Russian friends of mine can hear us on VK. My apologies. And of course, we're on YouTube. My suggestion would be to watch on YouTube rather on Facebook because the resolution is much clearer. I don't know what it is with Facebook, but there's a big difference between 720 and 1080 or even higher, which we can do.
Yeah, there's like 300, right?
We have. Well,
there's like 300 numbers. I don't know. What are you talking about, Brian?
All I'm saying is it would look nicer on YouTube than it would be on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, fine. But as we've said, in addition to becoming a member on our group page, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe on the Divided We Stand YouTube page. Now, there are other Divided We Stand groups out there, so you have to filter it. So when you put in the search, make sure you filter by channels, and then you'll see ours. So please subscribe.
Brian, that sounds awfully confusing. Can't you just hand deliver these things to everybody who listens to us?
Yeah, well, this is the new world, Dave. The brave new world.
It is a new world. That
certainly is. But no, we want to have all different platforms, and obviously my choice, Dave's choice, would be Facebook because that's where most of you are kind of keeping in contact with us. But in terms of the visuals, I think YouTube is really the platform of choice. It's just the way it is. And until Facebook changes their format with that, we're stuck. So it won't be as clear, but it still works. So we're happy to see you. Also, for those of you who are on our group page, we're very happy with our membership. We are a private group, but we still ask that, if you have friends of like minds, please invite them to become part of the group. we are very particular. Dave and I are administrators, so we will, from time to time, block people from coming in, and for good reason. There are some Trumpers who still try to get in, about 2 or 3 a week, try to come in, and every once in a while we have to bounce somebody out because we are a partisan group, which brings up this old topic, Dave.
Okay.
Things are looking better and better in terms of Joe Biden, and I'm tending to believe you right now that
As you should.
we're probably
Go
going
ahead.
to make it, although we'll talk about the other side in a bit. But, you've said all along that this group page, it really can't end because even you yourself have said that there are some ominous signs. And I thought perhaps you
Start
can
there.
tell us one or two that you figured in to be the worst of them.
As we've kind of agreed on in our talks, and I think it's the same thing we've established here. When we started this page in May, we were looking first of all to November, the election, right? And that is now accomplished. And I'm echoing Brian a lot on my end.
Gotcha. I'll take care of it. Don't
So
worry.
what happens is, again, I maintained that once those results were in, even not certified, that Joe Biden would be the president. And as you pointed out earlier, and correctly so, every indication is that on January 20th, Joe Biden will become president. However, I think there are still 2 very dangerous periods. We're in one now, and I don't want to call Donald Trump a wounded buffalo because that would be an insult to every buffalo who's ever lived. But what he is he's Donald Trump on steroids if he took them. And we could talk a little bit later about what it is exactly he's doing. But he's still president of the United States with limited powers that have been limited because you have an incoming president. But there's still a lot of things. And we see them all the time, Brian. We see them on our page. And I think what disgusts me, I mean, every week it's something new that disgusts me about Trump. But this idea of not realizing how much fear he's engendering out there was something that really won't happen or has a limited chance of happening. There was talk about going to war with Iran, and the sources were good that he was discussing it, etc. But let's assume that we do make it through, which I think we will. And Trump said the other day, on Thanksgiving, and then started tweeting and ass off after he got done. That, of course, if Joe Biden gets the electoral college votes, I'll go. And then he said Joe Biden has to, I think it was something like almost has to personally certify everyone. What an ass he is, Donald Trump. However, what I'd like to spend some time on later is what happens after January 20th in Donald Trump's life. So yeah, Brian, the short version is we said I think there were 3 stages. Success in stage 1, working all of us together. And when I say all of us, not just divided, we stand, but all the groups and individuals across the country who realize 3 things. And if you don't, I think there's something wrong with you. Joe Biden is a better person, a better man than Donald Trump. That should make him a better president. Joe Biden is a better leader than Donald Trump. He's proven it. It is, some of the detriments been to government, all this. He knows how government works. And then the third thing, which is kind of related to that better man thing, if indeed we're ever going to get past that idea of divided we stand, and I wish him well, I don't know. Probably there's one person in America right now who can extend the olive branch until he just gets slapped too much, and that would be Joe Biden. So I'm really at a loss to understand, unless you're a diehard Republican or you love Trump or you hate some group, including America or some minority, why you don't see that Joe Biden will be a better president in all categories than Donald Trump.
Right. Now, I'm going to add a scene here for a second. I want to show you something, Dave, because
Is he showing that Russian girl that you
no, Dave, I can assure you, it has nothing to do. You're still stuck on Russia. The
Well,
Republicans
I know
wouldn't
you're
like
past.
this.
I've seen the video.
All right. Past notwithstanding, this is, of course, the current page on Fox, on the internet, Fox News. Now, you and I know both, Dave, that Biden has this thing. Even if it does go to the Supreme Court, the evidence had to pass through the lower courts. All they can do is try to make something out of some mistake that the appellate courts made. But if you looked at Fox News, they still have a presentation that would make one think that we're in the thick of it. So, for example, Dave, let's just take a quick peek. Are you able to see the screen, Dave?
I am able to see the screen.
Excellent.
I got a hell of an echo on my, but I can see the screen.
It's coming off now. Okay.
Yeah.
It was a new scene, so I had to check.
I
You should be good
know.
now.
I'm just reminding you. Go ahead.
Right. No, and you need to, and you really do.
I know.
appreciate
I'm
it.
not mad.
Okay,
I mean, just because
so-
you're ruining me, that's okay. Go ahead.
Now they're trying to spin good news. Of course, they're saying that,
Right.
California looks like some things are switching.
Can we stop there just for a minute?
Sure.
Just at that headline. Former House Republican oust Dem incumbent. That is 100% true. That's a fact, right? But that next line, conservatives continue to shatter expectations in California. That is an opinion. Now, the moment you put those two together, you no longer have a fact. Something we learned very early in the reporting schools we didn't go to, we learned on the streets, was if you have one fact and one opinion, you no longer have a fact. It all becomes opinion, right?
Correct.
Because that's what happens. So, right away.
Well, 4 House seats, really, I mean, I don't know how they can consider that shattering expectations.
They're verbs. Okay. One of the things, and this is an interesting, I mean, this is not a program where people tune in to learn about journalism, but this is just something, if you're interested, each of those letters on an old headline counted something. And so you wanted the shortest verbs, right? And then you wanted to do action, not just action verbs, but really, shatter, shatter glass ceiling, shatter, you hear the glass. So the first thing is, whether it's MSNBC on the left, or Fox News or OAN or Sinclair or Newsmax on the right, when you read this stuff, you have to be very careful that it is indeed a fact. So again, as we said, former House Republican oust Democratic incumbent. Now, another thing you need to know, and I don't, but I mean, if I were really interested, is I need to know, was the Dem incumbent somebody that, just lucked in and got there? Was it a Republican district? This is when we talk about gerrymandering. So many districts, it takes a quirk of fate or timing or whatever to get a Democrat in or a Republican. So, I mean, but that's still fact. I mean, that's still a fact. But even those facts you need to explore. But shatter is an opinion word, and conservatives continue to shatter expectations in California.
And not only
Now,
that, though,
last
Dave,
I knew, what do they have? What do they have, Brian? Like five seats in the House and no seats in the Senate, something like that in California, right? Well, that's not very many. I mean, so
I know
one little seat.
Devin Nunes held one.
I know, but I'm just, what I'm saying. So it's you got to just use some fancy word spin. And that's not a fancy word, but I mean, what they're really saying is you have to dissect everything. And we add to this, you always should have done that. All politicians since the beginning of time, even Moses coming down off that mountain, if he did with the established, spun it to be to their advantage. But now suddenly we have people who flat out lie. They lie in the morning, they lie in the afternoon, they lie in the evening. I'm not Donald Trump. I don't know if I don't even know. He lies so much. I don't even know if he can tell truth.
Well, we know he
fiction.
lies, Dave. But my issue with this is we we have the main headline there, another
Right.
GOP triumph. And then right under that, it says Ohio certifies presidential elections, election results, Trump win. And then to the right of that, you'll see it says GOP poised to flip 4 House
Let's
seats.
look at let's look at those, Brian. They're really good to look at. Okay. Now,
And we're not even done with it.
we'll take the whole page. Let's really look at this. Okay, this is good for people, I think. So Ohio certifies presidential election results. Trump wins. You know when I knew that? November 4th, election
Right.
night. Okay, that was clear. That's nothing new.
Well, actually, November 3rd, we knew.
Well, I mean, I'm
Ohio
sorry,
was going to go
November-
quick. Ohio was
Now,
worse than Texas.
I mean, we knew that. All right. So now, so yes, but that's like saying today in Washington, D.C., there was air. Yeah. Well, why are you telling me that? Okay. Well, they're telling you that because they're playing the Trump game, which is this election is not over. Well, I mean, I hate to be sexist here, but some of these sayings are just so good, so true. They always say with the opera, it's not over till the fat lady sings. Well, she's been singing long and sweetly and beautifully. Okay. The only person who's not singing the right melody is the fat president in the White House. Okay. Bring up that screen again, Brian, because I want to take that other side. I saw something over there I want to talk about.
Sure.
Okay, so let's move that other side. GOP poised to flip 4 seats in California, more than any other state. Now let's look at that for a moment. Okay. Is that a true statement? Yeah.
Yes.
But you got to look into it more. All right. First of all, what does it mean to flip? Well, what it means is that you moved, from one party to the other. So a flip is a Democrat was in and a Republican takes over for Republican, or the reverse. But then you have to look at the state. I assume people realize that California has more seats than any other state, right? There are conservative areas in California. Everybody thinks of that as that, bastion of liberal and, free love and, hippies and still all that. But there's still bastion. Orange County was notorious for a long time. John Birch areas in the 60s. So it's still there. But the idea of it is, which would you rather have? When I'm speaking to you, Brian, not as you, the person, but as you represent the group. Would you rather have 4 House seats in California, or would you rather have the office of the presidency? Would you rather have the office of the presidency taken?
I'm sure, Dave, that given the choice, they would prefer the other.
Well, I mean, this is it. So again, you have to watch how a side says this. If you know about the election right now, the only people that are believing that that's good news are the people who still believe that Donald Trump has a chance to win. Now, I'm going to say something else about Fox News tonight. If Rupert Murdoch is listening out there, I wish Roger Ailes were still around, but he kept touching girls, so he can't be there anymore. But Rupert, if you're listening, first of all, you're a traitorous fuck to America and Australia and England. We all know that. But the other thing is, how much are you going to kiss Donald Trump's ass? He doesn't like you right now, right? He doesn't. I mean, that's clear and present because you one day offended him. That's Donald Trump. Monday you gave him something, and Monday morning and Monday night you didn't, and now he hates you. So we've got to be careful with Fox News. I mean, I don't watch it, but anybody does. There's always ulterior motives to what's going on.
Well, I think more of us are taking that 5 or 10 minute peek these days. I've noticed a lot of people have said the same thing I've said. I watch it, but I just want to check them out.
And you know what, Brian? I'm not saying that's wrong, but I don't even do that. I know it's going to be wrong. I mean, it's sort of like, I don't know, okay, I said opera before. Every so often, I listen to some opera music, and I still don't like it. Okay, it's probably the only form of music that basically I don't like. But I need to check it because I might change, right?
Right.
But I don't need to check Fox News.
Well, I get what you're saying.
I'm not saying
David.
you do. I'm not saying it's wrong. But what I'm saying is, and I'm gonna say better. I've just moved beyond that because I know it's wrong. I'll get I'm not. I'll see it in the paper. I don't need to watch it. I'll read about it when it's filtered through maybe some more truths than what they will give you there.
Here's my point, Dave.
Go ahead.
I mean, and they're two separate issues, so I'll try to
All right.
explain it as well as I can. First, and this is going to be a little bit strange, but I think in general, our brains like comfort, doing the same things all the time.
True. Very
doesn't
true.
really like change. So, for example, one way to get yourself out of your comfort zone would be to, for example, if you're right-handed, open your door with your left hand, just to start, changing something. Go a different route when you go for your normal walk. Okay.
Go ahead.
So you get where I'm going with that. That's the first thing.
I want to pose another question to you along those same lines. And basically what you said is very true. If you don't experience the other, you don't get to know it. I mean, you always need to step outside your comfort zone.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's really important for anybody's
no question about it. But
process.
here's the thing, Brian. If I hit you with a hammer on top of the head, will it hurt you?
Absolutely.
And if I hit you again with the hammer, will it hurt you?
Every time.
Yeah. So why do you need to be hit again in the head?
Okay. Well, that's where that's my second point.
And that's where I'm going
point.
with Fox News.
Okay.
Now,
because
if you want to tell me,
I'm going to have to explain why first. Okay. Because I gave you that first reason, and that's not the main reason, but I think sometimes it's
but you hear that, Brian?
To go outside of
you
your comfort
spoke
zone.
for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people say that. I need to see, they couch it as, I want to see what they're doing, or I need to see what the opposition is doing.
I just want to trip up my brain, say, okay, this is not something I normally do. I don't like it. Okay.
Well,
now, the second thing
I would suggest you do something else like cross dress or something that you don't normally do.
But
to
seriously
learn
speaking,
different. Right.
the second reason, and probably the most important reason, is, and you do this, you're guilty of this yourself. I like to try to draw some kind of conclusions, like connect the dots on what's going on.
Okay.
So, I'm trying to think, what route are they going? Because we know this is a propaganda arm for the Republican Party.
Correct.
And the president. I don't even want to call him the president, for Trump. Okay.
All right.
So when you look at something like this, let's just go back there, Dave, for a second.
Stay on that page.
Okay.
I mean, look at other stuff.
You see, again, it's I was a student of pop culture for a while, and I understand, generally understand marketing. They're giving them exactly what the constituents want. It's not that Fox is corrupt. It's that the people they are marketing to are corrupt.
Well, Brian, there you hit it right on the head. Okay. Look, I spent a lot of time, a decade of my life, in print journalism. I followed it ever since. I spent 3 years of my life working at the Museum of News, which expanded. You're talking about expanded. It certainly expanded my world into radio more than I'd ever been. Certainly into news. Certainly into internet news more than I've ever been. But the bottom line is, unless, okay, let me get this way. News is always about making money in this sense. If you're a journalist, right? And Joey, we'll get to that in a moment. That's a great question. Unless you're a journalist who is independently wealthy, you have to make a living, correct?
Right.
And the business of journalism, right, is not about truth and justice in the American way. The business of journalism is about making money for two groups, to pay those reporters, editors, photographers who are out there trying maybe their best to seek truth, justice, and the American way and report it. But it's also to make money for the corporation, for the stockholders. And what we find is there was always this drag and pull and drag between the news on one side, right, and the money on the other. Now, what Murdoch has done so brilliantly, if you like that kind, is you've heard this, I'm sure, Brian. Trump plays to the lowest instincts of people, and he does. Well, so does Murdoch. Murdoch did it. Follow him in Australia. Follow what he did in England. And follow what he does here. Also, and this is, I understand this, we're a visual culture. It's a lot easier to watch 30 minutes of news, right, than to read and digest. That would probably take you to get all that information, what, a couple hours, 3 hours, depending on how fast you read, how slowly you read. So for better or worse, we're wedded to this idea of TV news. Well, Murdoch knew that, and he played it. He played it very, very well. As far as a money-making organization, does he really care about news? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The real brains behind the operation, I mentioned earlier, was Roger Ailes. Roger Ailes is the one who actually made Nixon to understand television and what have you. And Roger Ailes started out as a shuckster for Merv Griffin. Not that Merv Griffin was a shuckster, but a TV. He knew TV, and they shape it. So, I would just say to anyone who relies on any one source, and when I say source, I'm talking about type. So I'm saying if anyone just relies on radio, or just relies on television, or even just relies on print, they're probably doing themselves a disservice. But if you do choose one, I would say choose print, because it allows you more control, right? Mm-hmm. The other thing is, if you rely on the internet, guess what? You're relying on radio, you're relying on print, and you're relying on TV anyway, because that's where they get.
But if looking at this, Dave, I mean,
go ahead.
You mentioned the verbs, okay?
Go ahead.
It doesn't even have to be the verbs, but the adjective. It doesn't matter. But it says here, Wisconsin PA fights rage on. As if, for example, when they say it rages, it's
there's
as
your
if
verb.
There's a battle, between
listen,
two sides that's equal.
Brian, that's exactly what it is. On one hand, right? It is. Okay? We're not going to get any rest from this. There's Fox out there, and if Fox falls, there's OAN out there, and if OAN falls, there's Sinclair out there, and if Sinclair falls, there's Newsmax out there.
But he's giving these people, false hope, and he's going to get them angry when they don't get there.
What do you, Brian? What do you think do you really think that Donald Trump is out for truth? Of course,
absolutely not. I understand that.
And they buy into that now. Let's
part of the problem with our society today is that the media, it's a feedback loop.
Okay, look, I've said it before. I have no problem saying it. I would certainly debate it with anyone that doesn't believe it. United We Stand has only applied in America in very few situations, very few. And I'd say none 100%. But like United We Did Stand, they would say, oh, well, what about World War II? What about the Japanese that were interred, that went against everything we stand for, right? There were pacifists. The Republicans were trying to torpedo FDR at that time. And I choose that verb. No, never put me over there. I don't look like that guy. They would never do that. So this idea, it's nice in theory, but we've never been united. Now, I think what the difference is today is the speed of communications and the fact of the internet. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It can be the best tool mankind has of its type, and it can be the worst. And in this case, it becomes the worst because it spreads propaganda, falsehoods, and lies as truth. Also, people have a very hard time. They're kind of grown, they kind of hear that thing. Well, it's in the newspaper. It must be true, right? You heard that growing up.
Right.
Well, now it's the reverse. It's in the newspaper. It can't be true. Well, neither one of those were true, right? Neither one of those statements were true. But there has to be some agreeable truce for a nation to function. So if what you're saying is Fox News is a threat to America, anything that takes a stand that is counterproductive and encourages rage and dissension and false hope or anything like that, of course they're a threat to America. Now, here's the big problem. I'm not going to do it tonight. I'm actually working on a little bit on it, so we'll discuss one. The problem is, if you censor if you censor something, right? And we're not even talking about the First Amendment tonight because that needs a whole show in and of itself. But basically, here's my problem with censorship. If you allow censorship, who censors the censors? Who decides what's censored? You know, it used to be that, and I believe this, and I'm not so sure I do anymore. In fact, I'm almost sure I don't, that eventually truth, science, whatever they are, that 2 + 2 does equal 4. Yeah, we can argue that a variation of that is it's also 3 + 1. But basically, if you put two things together and two things together, right, you have 4. They're the kinds of things, that we're arguing over now. So is Fox News complicit in that? Of course it's complicit in that. And, I don't want to sound like a raging socialist here, but I do have socialistic leanings. It worries me because we're talking about unfettered capitalism. That's really the problem, Brian.
Well, my problem with Fox, Dave, look, there's all ranges of presentation, whether
Correct.
it's outright propaganda to
Correct.
truthful reporting, but maybe with too much emotion. And then there's, 1964 with Walter Cronkite. But what bothers me is that there are individuals from Fox who try to incite people. The Lou Dobbs.
Okay.
That's
give
different.
me 3. Okay, let me ask you a simple question, okay, Brian? Because you're really onto something here. Name me 3 people on the Fox network that you recall who are the biggest inciters. Name just any 3.
Hannity, number 1.
Okay, Dobbs you mentioned, and
Dobbs. When O'Reilly was there, that was
but
fine.
he's gone now, so he's
But
gone.
Janine Pirro, I think she's one
there
of them
certainly.
too.
Tucker
I mean,
Carlson.
we're
is
comparing
there.
scars here.
No, but what I'm saying, Brian, then look at the salaries. You know who are the highest paid?
Well, right now it would be Hannity, right?
And you'd work right down the scale.
Right.
Okay. Now, so Fox News is a business, right? They're a brand. They've chosen their brand. Their brand is republicanism, right? That was their brand.
It
Yeah.
was. Okay.
I said was.
Right.
And now it's Trump publicanism, whatever that
Well, it's
thing is.
called American fascism.
I have no problem with that. I have no problem calling it.
I mean, let's just
I have no problem. We're
Say
not
it.
going to mince words. You're absolutely correct. Because what happens too in these arguments, when you start tippy-toeing around things.
Well, let me ask you.
No,
Would,
anyways, they're going to say you are a fascist anyway, or you're not.
Would you have a problem with me saying they should be called the American Fascist Party?
I should not. I would not.
Okay.
Because they demonstrate. But see what happens with those kinds of words, Brian. I'm not saying not to use them. What happens is they have. Boy, I'm sounding like
Has more strength.
I'm teaching
There's no doubt about
college
that.
then. No, but again, there's certain things we need to know. It's not about smartness. With words have denotation and they have connotation. They're just fancy things for this. A denotation of the word is what it means. A connotation is all those other feelings that come in,
up.
right? Slender versus skinny, right?
Right.
Large boned. I mean, it can be personal, but this kind of thing too. So what happens is two things when you use these isms, whether it's communism, socialism, democracy, it doesn't have to be an ism, any of these political terms, they mean something, right? If you go to the dictionary. But they've been around, and it's hard to talk about fascism without hearing the name Adolf Hitler attached to it, right? It really is. There's interesting, a lot of
Right.
and
And so, in other words, they get a free pass because nothing compares to Hitler, not even Mussolini.
I believe, you've seen that. You've seen that very much. Let me say what does compare to Hitler. Did Hitler have camps where people were placed simply because of something they were or some background they had?
Well, look, I'm not going to argue that because there are. We're comparing. Look, yes, absolutely,
So-
but I think that's not the point, Dave. The point is, would Trump go that far had he the power to do it? And that's where I say yes. He
Absolute-
goes as far as he can go.
Brian,
So
that's
for the
not-
camps, the camps are
wouldn't
not
even-
the same camps as
Look.
Auschwitz. There's no doubt about that. You and I agree on that. But
Anyone with any sense would agree on that. Would Trump, if he could, put every single voter in a camp if by being in that camp they couldn't vote? And the answer is yes.
Absolutely.
Of course he would. Of course he
Absolutely.
would. Now, what I find so ironic, and that's another word, that gets misplayed a lot, but the irony of that is the people who claim they're supporting him view themselves as patriots. And I very simply say that if you support Donald Trump, there's a couple of things you can't be. You can't be a patriot to America. You can't be. It's exclusive. You
they're
can't be a
co-opting the word
You
patriot.
can't be a Christian and support Donald Trump. You're co-opting the word. A Christian cannot support that type of behavior.
Their denotation is different than yours. And it's unfortunate because you're right.
Well, no, actually, you are onto something there. You were joking about it. But what the difference is, people who understand denotation and connotation understand the difference. What they've really done is taking their connotations and made them a denotation, and you can't do that.
Right.
You can't do that.
I would agree
They're
with you.
two separate things.
The connotation has become
And
the
if
denotation.
if you're going to have discussions, you have to be able to use words that don't, those ones we saw, rage and spark and battle. Now, it is hard, okay? It's basically hard. People say, oh, you're nitpicking on this. I am not a Democrat, okay? And there's very simple reasons. I'm not a joiner. I don't join parties. When you join parties, and I'll tell you why, you do exactly what the Republicans did with Donald Trump. You rally around something that's despicable just because he says he's an R. I don't want to do that. What I am is an extreme liberal. Now, because in 900 billion elections versus one more, the more liberal candidate will be a Democrat. My record reflects that I vote Democratic in every presidential election, certainly in every national election, senators and things. Does that make me a member of the Democratic Party? No, but that's when you change that. They don't understand that, and they think they're the enemy. And Brian, let's not kid ourselves. We should think they're the enemy too. We should. Okay. They're not nice people. They're not. You can't be a nice person and support Donald Trump. And I defy, if anyone out there disagrees with me, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But let's sit down and let's figure out if I'm telling the truth or you're telling the truth. And what I mean by that is you're going to tell me, not you, the person, but somebody, I can be a nice person and still support Donald Trump. And I'm telling you, you can't be. One of us has to be right? But because we don't talk, and we don't do that, we'll never know. Right. So 73, I don't know what the final numbers are. Let's say, I think it'll probably approach somewhere. 74 million voted for Trump, 80 million approximately voted for Joe Biden.
Right. That's fair.
That's about right.
And by the way, as
Yes.
much as Trump says that there was massive fraud, the reality is, Dave, we'll never know how much fraud on the other side occurred.
Yeah, well, we do know this. Right now in that election, 100% of the fraud
was on the other side
by Republicans.
Right.
It's two certified cases last night.
And they still lost. Well, not only that. You're talking about specific cases.
Yeah, that's all there are.
I'm talking about voter suppression, Russia, everything.
Oh, absolutely.
They have done everything to cheat.
What I find interesting about what you just said, in 2016, there is no doubt that the Russians directly attempted to subvert American democracy. There's no question with the bots and the things that they put out to divide, to do all that. They didn't do it this time. Do you know why, Brian?
Why?
I'm going to echo.
Well, actually, no, I cut it off. I want to throw something out here for the comments.
Brian, and then we can go move on. You know why they didn't this time? Here's why. They didn't need to. The Trumpites had learned from them how to do it on their own. They didn't need the Russians. The Russians were almost non-existent in this election because
That we
they
know
had
of.
well, no, Brian, it's no. You have to believe somebody. If you listen to Democrats that were overlooking this, and if you listen to Republicans, they said no. It wasn't like 2016. It was still there, but our own people were doing it. Americans were doing
Well,
it.
no, I look. All I'm saying is this, Dave.
Right.
We will never know the amount of chicanery that occurred on the other side because they've gotten away with it. You haven't heard Biden say, "I want to check out and see."
There's
A
no reason
recount
to-
in the
I'm
red
not,
counties.
I'm not hollering at you. I'm saying there's
Okay.
no reason for Biden to check it out. He
No,
won.
I get it. All I'm saying is
Right.
the
Well,
reality
that's like-
is
well,
that 80 million to 74 million, it could be 82 million.
it could be 84 million. I agree, Brian.
Okay, whatever it is, it's higher than 80. And if anybody is cheating, it's Trump. Okay, and
Well,
even with the cheat, he loses.
tell that to Donald Trump Jr.
Well, now, Dave, I want to.
Go
I
ahead.
do want to not get
Try to
too
get
far
that
away
one.
from the comments because everybody.
Yeah, no,
we wanna-
let's go.
We will go through some of these. We'll start with Joey's.
Let's do them now.
Is there a chance Trump will go to Mar-a-Lago before January 20th and not come back? Also, I think Joey might be alluding to that he may just leave entirely too.
Okay.
He's in jeopardy the closer he gets to the 20th. What do you think?
There's really three schools of thought on what he'll do. One is, I've had enough of this. I'll just go down there. I'll hang out and not come out. That's one. And that's kind of what Joey's saying. It would be logical. Some people don't realize this. He's transferred all his legal residencies to Mar-a-Lago. He's no longer associated with New York City anymore at all in terms of a residency. He is now a Florida resident. There's also the other kind of a flip side of that. He will resign and let Vice President Pence assume the presidency and then pardon him and go out that way. The third is that he'll stay and do just what he does and leave. I think there was a fourth one on the table, which people were really thinking he was going to grab onto the desk in the Oval Office and not leave. We could dismiss the fourth one. So all of them are viable. It might be a combination of some of them. The one that I think is least viable, given Trump's personality, is that he will remove himself and let Vice President Pence pardon him. That could be challenged in court.
Or pardon himself.
That will be challenged. They would both be challenged in court. And the thing
Which
to remember
court?
for those of
Which
us,
court?
for those of us,
Supreme Court?
what?
Supreme Court?
No, it would start. It's a chain up. You would start in federal court and work your way up. That's a federal charge. See what happens, Brian. If it happens in Bridgeton, New Jersey, our hometown, it starts in municipal court, and then it moves up to what used to be county, but now they've eliminated county court. It moves to state, then state to federal, and then federal to the United States Supreme Court. If you have a case like that, so I mean, I don't think he will do that. But what people have to remember, for those of us who believe that he is guilty of crimes, both before he entered the White House and while he was in the White House, the only things he can be pardoned for by himself, by Pence, or by Joe Biden, right, are federal crimes. The only person that could pardon him for state crimes is the governor in the state in which he committed crimes. So therefore, if his crimes were committed in his new place of residency, Florida, yeah, they got a Republican governor, probably a done deal. New York doesn't have.
Right. So isn't Joey correct to think that in the way he might try to back out of this somehow?
Well, but
Does
have
he
you
go to
ever
Saudi
seen,
Arabia?
yeah. I mean, it's funny with Trump. I was thinking about that a little bit today, Brian. He's so chaotic and so confusing and such an enigma, and at the same time, so obvious. You don't hear that much anymore, though, right now, right? I mean, that was a big talk. He's going to go to Russia. You don't hear that now, right? So what happened? I mean, did it just drop out as a possibility? Did somebody have insight? I mean, I don't know. Would Putin take him in? Look, Putin got what he wanted from him. If he was involved, let's assume that he
Right,
was.
why would he want Trump there anyway?
He wouldn't. He wants Snowden. Now, we will talk. This is not the point. We will talk about Trump.
They want information from Trump.
Not right. I'm saying Trump leaves the White House with many bargaining chips, okay, for foreign powers. But right now, I guess, Joey, to answer your question as best I can, I don't know. I'll start there. But no, if you saw today, and I haven't really had enough time to look at it. He made an announcement that if indeed he does declare as for the presidency in 2024, that he may well do it before he leaves the White House and will hold a rally on Inauguration Day. Now, that's something he would do, hold a rally on Inauguration Day. Now, does that really matter? It doesn't as far as Donald Trump and Joe Biden are concerned. It does as far as America continue to be divided does, right? Right? Now, these are the same people. I mean, I'm watching these comments come up, truth.
They're a little bit late. I'm
watching them as they come through. But what I'm saying is this. I mean, I think they do form a thread. Okay?
By the way, hello, Osama. Good to see you visiting tonight.
Yeah. Here's the thing. The thread that they form is they're talking about lies, right? Well, here's how I take it very simply. Donald Trump lies. Okay. But people believe his lies, and they think that anybody who doesn't believe his lies. Well, I think they lie. So, you can't convince someone of truth. Now, there are some issues, Brian, that are very difficult. Okay. Abortion is a very difficult issue. I understand that. If you really believe, and I can intellectually play that game, that it is a form of murder. Nobody in their right mind believes murder is legal. And so that gets a difficult game. But the fact of Donald Trump, it's easy. Donald Trump lies. If you believe his lies, you're conned, or you think like he does, you're going to say, I'm lying. I'm not the least bit concerned. So these things, when they say, look, let's be clear. I hate that. Trump supporters, the right wing, the conservatives say, Obama was a terrible president. Give me the proof. I ask him for proof. And basically, they can't give any. So what it comes down to me is they believe Obama was a bad president because in their white world, a black man was able to assume the White House. The one that's ludicrous on its face, Michelle Obama on her least classiest day on the planet exuded more class than Melania could if she went to finishing school for 8 years. Okay. Yet you see that, Brian, right? Joey, that's absolutely right. So whoever told you that is absolutely correct. New York will go after him for crimes committed, tax evasion, and other things related to the businesses he ran there. And he is guilty of them. It's a question of proving it in the court. Will we ever see Trump's tax records? And for that matter, will we ever see the full Mueller report unredacted? Anthony, I'm going to answer that this way. I don't think we will, but I'll tell you what, if Donald Trump is convicted, right, for tax fraud based on his tax records, I never need to see them. Hey, Keith from Australia. Hope all is well with you. And, a lot of thoughts are directed your way. How do you say repair a decided, and that was divided. I got that divided issue. Keith, that's an excellent question. And for those who don't know, Keith, he's one of our foreign followers. And by foreign, I don't mean alien. He comes from Australia. And it must be amazing, Brian, to look at this America, right? Who land of the free, shining city on the hill, bastion, give me your huddled masses, and wake up and find Donald Trump is there. Keith, the best thing I could say to you is what I say all along. We've always been divided. This is just more divided. And again, that's another thing. I would love to get somebody on this show who would argue with me on that. I think I would maintain that I'm right. Um, Brian, I mean, I know you kind of agree with that. I don't care whether you do or not. I'm not being smart, but I mean, just to put you on the spot for a minute, or anybody else out there. Can you tell me one time in American history when we weren't divided?
Well, the closest thing I would say is World War II. It certainly wasn't World War One, and even World War II, there were instances where people want to just isolate. So it's
Now
it's typical.
Yeah, and sometimes when we're not divided, that's a bad thing. I would say in World War II, that's the second. Well, the three biggest abuses of people in America would be, of course, you could make an argument who in 1 and 2 are, whether it was the indigenous American peoples that we took their land and their lives and their way of life from to where we've reduced them to nothing, or whether it was the African Americans who we brought here enslaved, and 401 years later, they're still victims of systematic racism. But also you have to put up there, although they came back, were the Japanese, who were, as I said, interred in those camps. So sometimes when you get united, right, that's not the best thing, right? Because then there's no loyal or disloyal opposition. So I just don't think we were. I think because we were survivalists, the country has survived. Keith, to you, I think this is very interesting. And I would love to hear you or anyone else from Australia on this. Australia is an island, a continent island, but it's still an island. And we were once an island, right? A continent island, if you will. But we became an empire, stretched out all over the world. So one of the biggest divisions, Brian, I think, and we're going to have to deal with it, is, and that again comes down to kind of conservative versus liberal view. I don't think America can exist in isolation anymore. I don't know that it ever could, but it certainly can't now. Mm-hmm. If justice reigns in America, shouldn't have Bush and Cheney been prosecuted for crimes against humanity? Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. What I find interesting is that there have been people, so I understand this, oh no, America has justice. No. America has laws that sometimes are enforced and sometimes aren't. Now, you need laws, okay? We can't be a lawless world. But it begins in small communities, Brian. Okay. Do you think it would be safe to say that I probably, given my position and my length of time in the community, know more policemen than you do in the town of Bridgeton? We both live there, but would you agree with that statement?
Yes.
So if I got pulled over for, doing 55 and a 50, nothing reckless, and you got pulled over for that same one, who might have a better chance of not getting the ticket?
Obviously you. That's the way it works.
So that's what I'm saying. That's really where justice breaks down. You know what I'm just saying? Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of glad that happens. And it certainly has happened to me on numerous occasions. So I think what happens is a lot of American leaders maybe have said, oh, we are the moral leaders of the world. Yeah. When Adolf Hitler was running Germany and Mussolini was running Italy and Tojo was running Japan and Mao Zedong was running China and Stalin was running Russia, by default, we were the last people standing. We were probably the moral leaders. But it's nothing to take home. It's nothing to take home and show mom. Gee, mom, we're so moral. So I think there's a lot of that.
There's some thanks coming in here, Dave, from Anthony.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, David Pakman has that generally progressive show, good show.
David Pakman,
but it's so popular. See, that's the thing too, Anthony. That
right.
I think Dave and I we completely agree on. We are a much smaller channel, and that's the advantage that we have. It's kind of like being the small business because you can have a personal relationship where Brian, you're lucky if you get a word in edgewise.
How many shows have we done? We've done a few. That's the first break thing.
We're up to like 43.
Yeah, I'm laughing, but no, seriously, that there is, and see. That's something that America has lost sight of too, a little bit, and that capitalism makes you lose sight of that. What's the driving force of capitalism, Brian? You're
demand.
Demand. Well, demand to get money, right? At the end, I mean,
Well, profit, but
yeah,
yeah, in
profit.
most cases, profit, right?
Yeah,
But you need the demand.
You look at
create it.
demand and supply and adjust it accordingly
Right.
to make profit, right? So profit, in this case, money, yeah, or stock options, whatever. And once you begin to do that, right, you kind of lose sight of justice. Hmm? So if we are truly capitalists, um, and a lot of these myths, sorry, Mrs. Wisham, my ninth grade civics teacher, and Gary, if you're listening, you and I've talked about
She's
this.
in the chat room, so be careful.
She's been dead for 30 years, Brian.
Yeah, well, she just
she's in
came
the chat
back.
room. We got a bigger story than this stupid ass thing we do. But she was our ninth grade civics teacher, and she was a believer in America, and she really did school us well. I give her all the credit in the world. But she was one of those who, in a time when you could kind of buy into those myths, right? And they were myths. I mean, it's always been, since time began, it's about power, because in politics, if you don't have power, you can't do anything. And Brian, you've heard me do this way too much, but maybe there's somebody out there who hasn't. If you're gonna put yourself into a position of leadership or authority, you better have some damn lines you won't cross.
Right.
I'll do this, but I won't do that. And understand, I've been a boss a couple times, and those lines get somewhat blurred, right? But
Right.
you have to know basically who you are representing, and not be seduced by that power. Australia's still divided. Aboriginals are still discriminated against in the process of assimilation. And that's the other, Keith. And I think we're somewhat naive when we think that, automatically, unfortunately, people look more since the beginning of time at divisions, whether it's color, whether it's sex, whether it's class, whatever. That brings me, I like to do stories, Brian, so I'm going to do one tonight, if you'll allow me for a minute.
Sure.
I was in Washington, D.C. today. Actually went in later after dark. My wife wanted to see the new Eisenhower Memorial lit up. It wasn't, but that's neither here nor there. So we come back and we're walking from the metro to our apartment complex. And I look down, it's stairs that lead down to our underground. And there was two young black gentlemen there. They were like taking pictures or something. They kind of looked at, and the one guy said, "Hey," and I said, "Hey," and we started bantering back and forth. And they were really cool young men, right? Well, a couple of things crossed my mind. One is a lot of Trump supporters wouldn't have done that, right?
Right.
Because they fear African Americans, or they fear the other. Getting back to Anthony's thing here, but I took it a step further, which is I have a new Trump disease now. I'm starting to see the whole world in terms of Trumps and not Trumps, and I thought, isn't it sad? Now, maybe these two young men, maybe they are gang killers, but I wouldn't think so. We really had a nice conversation. And I thought I could think of two other young men whose names should be Beavis and Butthead, but they're actually named Donald Jr. and Eric. And so many Americans would think those two, right? Aspire to be those two. I would take the two black gentlemen I met every day of the week, every week of the year, every year of my life, regardless of their economic status, maybe even regardless of their criminal record. So I think that gets to this great American myth. Donald Trump has corrupted everything he's ever touched in his life. Again, Donald, if you want to come on, I could be wrong. Show me something you haven't corrupted. Certainly, I don't think he's in line to ever get Father of the Year, right? I mean, he certainly hasn't demonstrated that. But yet there are a lot of people. He's the American, right? He has the money. He has the power. He came from nowhere. He's a self-made man. He can't be bought. All of those things aren't true.
They aren't
All
true.
of them are
None
the
of them are
opposite.
true.
None of them are true. Not one
But
of
see,
them. is
again,
true.
that's where it goes back to the beginning, where we were talking about with media. It really, not to us, but to these people, the truth the truth doesn't matter.
Doesn't.
It's the perception
Brian,
that matters
Brian,
in this country,
would
and
like-
that's
I would like to
the
say-
sad part, the
I
frustrating
agree
part.
it's sad, but I think again.
Do you remember? I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Oh, sure,
Do you remember
absolutely.
the movie Being There?
Oh,
And
yeah.
even at the end of the movie, you didn't know whether he was stepping on rocks.
No, I know.
Or he could walk
Well-
on water. But it's a great metaphor for how some people would see him as this, and others would see him as a charlatan.
Well, again, America was founded on some myths. All countries are founded on myths. And I'm not talking about religious myths, although they kind of assume those proportions. One was the myth of the Wild West, right? John, it would be more the Gary Cooper character in High Noon, riding in, to save the day, an individualist. But people miss that point. Gary Cooper rode in not to save the day for himself, right? But to save the day for the town. He basically said, I'm going to get my ass kicked, right? But I'm going to do it for these people.
And he threw down his badge at the end of the movie.
He realized it. The other thing is, I find it interesting that this, we use these guys, or hold them up as, these gunslingers or gunmen, some kind of role model. And they did. But when they went to Tombstone, Arizona, and I think that's the city, right? I mean, I did have the Earp brothers against the Clanton brothers, and that's real. And you can visit it. And, they're not, I mean, we've made them into myth, but they were real characters. And the shootout at the OK Corral actually happened. All right. But part of the problem was the Clantons were disregarding the only law that was in Tombstone. When you come into Tombstone, you checked your guns. They don't say that. In Kansas City, you checked your guns. But the movies that we grew up with, right, they didn't depict that. All the bad guys wore the black hats. All you had to be good, put the white hat on. Interesting, isn't it? Black, bad, white, good. I mean, all that stuff seeps in when you're young and you're off and running. Now, that's why I think, Brian, getting back, we're all tying this back into Fox, is that they do, or the American dream myth.
Right.
The American dream has never worked for the African American population. It never has.
Well, that's when I remember studying.
Individuals achieve it, right? But as a group, they can't. They start behind, not from anything they are, right? Just inherently behind.
Well,
because
can we just look at some of these myths? Because you talked about.
I like them. Yeah.
Okay. You just mentioned the idea. This is something about what America was in the 50s. Apple pie. That
It wasn't. But yes, it's the myth. I agree. We're just talking about the myth.
We had the myth, also the myth that technology is the savior. We've had that myth, and these are all the things I remember studying, and they all are true in a certain way. We have these myths that, I mean, there's just myths everywhere, but they're applied to pop culture. They're like Joseph Campbell applied to pop culture, the hero of 10,000 Faces.
Right. And look, if anybody out there doesn't know, we're not going to get too deep into Joseph Campbell, Brian and I, tonight. But if you really want to understand kind of the way the world works, Joseph Campbell is a good place.
Still,
to
lectures
start.
have to be on YouTube somewhere, Dave.
Oh, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. I mean, the best are when he and Bill Moyer, when Bill Moyer sat down and they would do this thing and they would talk. I mean, they're two brilliant men, right? One brilliant in asking questions, the other brilliant.
By the way, there's that. I forgot the one myth. The myth of American, not excellence, but that we're better than. I forget the expression.
Well, I know what you're using. I just say American superiority, and that's not it. I know.
Yeah, it's basically the foam number one. I mean, I don't know what
American
number one you
exceptionalism,
are.
American.
Exceptionalism.
Well, yeah,
but those were real myths that are perceived as true, especially so within that group of people.
See, there you are, Brian. That's interesting. So if a myth is perceived to be true, right? and you're
And
certainly
that's all you
right.
need.
Well, two things, right?
You could have a holiday named after you on December 25th if you're that lucky.
You're right. Okay, but here's the thing about
2,000
myths.
years later.
Here's what happens with myths. There's going to be two kinds of people. Those who forget about believing in it. Everybody believes in it, right? The myth is, or it's there, right? There are those who the myth makes successful, right? And there's those who think they should be successful because that's the myth and they aren't. Well, if it's a myth, it means it's not the reality. So both of those parties are going to be very disgruntled and very unhappy.
Right.
And that's part of the problem with the world of Donald Trump's supporters. They believe in this myth that every succeeding generation should be more successful than the one that preceded it. But they look at it in terms of dollars, right? Let's use this town, Brian, because everybody can pretty much equate to this. Bridgeton once was a thriving community. It's where I lived once upon a time, and Brian lives now. And it was a city. It's fluctuated with population, between 18 and 22,000, in the modern age. And it had one factory. It was a glass plant. It was the largest glass plant in the world, and they took very good care of that town. And I'll use my wife as an example. And she was talking to her brother tonight. Both of them were able to finance their full way, Brian, to college by working there in the summer.
Well, our friend Paul McGinley, his father used to be a troubleshooter.
Was there. Yeah, I know. So the idea was that made sense, right? So Judy's grandfather had a farm. And then his son, which would be Judy's father, worked as a foreman and made a good living for him in a factory. Then Ralph and Judy come along, and because he works in the factory and was able to get them jobs, right? Nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's the way it works. They were able, and it goes
unless you were of a different color and you didn't get the
and
job.
there you are. That's there you are. Well, I was denied employment there. Now I'm very grateful I was denied employment there. I didn't want to work there, even though it was the only place to work in town, because my hair was too long. And I was fine with that, trust me. I came home, I was ecstatic. It was like going to the draft and being told you're 4F. I mean, I came home and told my dad,
a badge of honor.
They rejected me. Okay. I can't get a job there. No place to work, Dad. I got to hang it. No. But
especially after watching Easy Rider, change your mentality.
Well, it was before
you told me that night you were ready to go into town and
not Bridgeton, but that was Philadelphia.
Seek revenge.
Yes. No, that's true.
I can understand it.
But the thing is now, Brian, that what's happening, you mentioned this earlier, and I think it's something we need to address more and more on this show as we eventually move into things that divide us. And you can see tonight's really a good example of that. We're really not completely focusing on Trump, although he's there. We're looking at the things that divide us, which will be there when Trump he's never going to really be gone until he dies. His power will be somewhat eroded if he goes to prison, but he'll always be a force. But this idea of that myth, and that was a Victorian myth, very much a Victorian myth, that science would make us better. Now, if you go back, and I really advise people to do this, and you don't have to study them, read 2 Charles Dickens novels, okay? I know they're long, but they're pretty simple. That tells you life in industrial Victorian Britain was harsh and bad. Oliver Twist, there were more Oliver Twists than there were nephews of the king, all right? And so we did start making progress, right, with science, but there should always be a caveat with science. For the most part, science is a job reducer, not, hey, environmental coffee house lady, Sandy, is not a job
creator.
Grab
a cup of coffee.
Brian, would you agree with that? In general, science, well, let me put it in 2 ways. Science in general is a job reducer, in general, but it's a reducer of those qualified to get those jobs because of the knowledge you need to work in the scientific field. All right.
In general, yes, but
Okay.
you see,
Go
let's
ahead.
just take that for a
Go ahead.
second though, because when you look at it that way, you say, okay, technology moves in, you lose jobs, and there's usually a net loss in jobs. I get that, but think of it in this way too. At some point in time, we'll have a society, if we survive climate change, which doesn't look good now, where everything will be automated and you won't need to work.
All right. Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
and so it
All right,
depends
all right,
if you're
all
the
right,
horse
all
in
right,
1917
well,
and you're the horse in 2019, or whatever. There's two different
I
lifestyles.
understand that. But I'm going to take it even a different way, Brian. I'm going to take it this way. Science is our benefactor because science is involved in health. Do you realize the pandemic? Yes. Okay. But if you remove the pandemic, do you realize the world, and remember, the world is more than the United States, has never been healthier. Life expectancy has never been longer. And so my thing is this American myth that involved this capitalism and, kind of an anti-science world is really wrong because we were looking for the wrong things. The Beatles, money, right? Money can't buy you love. Yeah, okay, that's a song lyric, but you know what? It can't. It can get you a hell of a long way toward it. It can certainly satisfy your lust. Okay, it can certainly make your pool a lot more attractive if you want women, who are attracted to money. But it doesn't. Yeah, there's another guy, Keith, that more of us should read. What a brilliant
He
man.
figured it out long before we did.
What a brilliant man. My God. Not such a great human being, as most of them are on the side.
But he made it. Can I talk about this for a second, Dave?
Yeah, sure.
And you and I have discussed this, but
Right.
Sagan was one of the ones who eloquently pointed out, had religion not got involved with these dark ages, going after science, the library in Alexandria, the shame is all this technology we're talking about, during the times of Washington, we probably would have had all this technology.
Right. Well, but I see, again, that's a basic conflict. That's going to be division that stands. And that brings me to a point I wanted to make tonight. So thank you for the segue. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who will go down in history as one of the greatest Supreme Court justices of all time, who did not, was not the senior justice. She said in her time, she thought the two worst decisions made, well, one was a decision and one was a non-decision, was Citizens United, where money equated to being a person. And the other was gerrymandering and not being active in removing that. And I think that, she was onto something. I'm going to say that just this week, we had a decision that was almost just as heinous. It was Amy Coney Barrett. I know how much you admire her, but it was her first decision. And in a 5-4
Listen to that sarcasm.
In a 5-4 court, the decision was this. It seems kind of innocuous at the time, but it isn't. We're talking about science versus religion, right? We're right back at the Scopes monkey trial.
Right.
And basically what 5 members of the Supreme Court, at least 4 of them who shouldn't even be allowed to drive by the Supreme Court, they're such reprehensible legal minds. The jury's still out on Gorsuch as far as I'm concerned. But decided in a case that the mandates of New York in limiting the size of religious gatherings infringed upon the supposedly separation of church and state powers. Think about that for a moment. What they did, we are not a theocracy. That ruling kind of smacks of theocracy. We are not one nation under God. That is not what we are. That was put in later. Okay, that all that God stuff was put in when communism was running around. That's really what it was. The Boy Scouts got it put in. It wasn't about
Right.
that.
Right.
The founders were deists, if not rationalists. I mean, they believed in a God. Jefferson made up his own damn Bible. He took the parts that were believable and put it there. But what happens now is that gets back to the big division that I'll be talking about. Have always talked about. It certainly plays out every day. Is there are individual freedoms, and America is good in listing them. We really are. That's one of our strengths, okay, that we have, these listings. But there's also responsibilities to your fellow man, right? So I have the right, I suppose, not to wear a mask. I suppose, if you extend it out logically, right? But do I have the right to kill someone? No, I don't. Well, if I'm carrying a disease in the middle of a pandemic that I might not even be aware I'm carrying because I might be asymptomatic, do I have the right to go around into crowds and do that? And that's basically what the Supreme Court ruled, is under the guise of religion. Yeah, you can do that. Now that would be fine, Brian, if the coronavirus said this. I don't think it does, but maybe it does. Correct me if I'm wrong. If it said, okay, I'm going to pick and choose, who I'm going to infect, and I'm only going to infect people that violate the regulations, right? No, it just it's like, it's a bad analogy, but it's like a really small, too small to see Terminator. It doesn't stop until you stop it, right? And you stop it, with vaccines or immunity and that kind of thing. So that really bothers me because now you have the 5 votes. And I've said it, Brian, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I wasn't that worried about the court like doing something necessarily politically, but this is not political. It's just as dangerous because once you start taking God's side, who's God? Okay. Now the court, those who defended it said that it looked like they were picking on the Roman Catholics and the Orthodox Jews. Somebody please correct me on this number. I know it was in the thousands. There was some ceremony, religious ceremony, where thousands attended just recently.
Right. It was an Orthodox wedding.
Right.
It was ridiculous.
Well, in their faith, it isn't, right?
Hold it. In their extreme version of that faith.
No, it's their
because,
faith.
Believe me, Jews in Long Island who are conservative or liberal, they don't like the Orthodox.
Well, no, Brian, I'm not attacking Jews.
Right.
I'm attacking in their version of their faith in that church. That's all.
Right.
And I'm sorry, to me, and I'm not on the Supreme Court, and I'm not a lawyer, but I do think I have some common sense, and I think that many times, this being one of them, when individual rights have to be subordinate to the defense, safety, and welfare of the group as a whole. And the Supreme Court, 5-4, and it might as well be unanimous, right?
Right.
Because that decision, it doesn't matter. One vote pushes it over, and it doesn't matter, is now the law of the land. Now, what I did find interesting in the winning side's position, they raised a couple interesting points, or one interesting point they thought, and I'm going to dismiss that. Okay, so all you 5, Justice Clarence, I don't think you can find my place, but if you're around tomorrow and you're not doing anything, Mr. Thomas, come on over and we'll talk about this a while. Clarence, my boy. But anyway, here's the point. I forget who's dissenting, Aliotis. I'm not sure who wrote it, but anyway, they were saying, but wait a minute, this is very unfair because you allow, what was it, acupuncture to be open and this to be open in bars, liquor stores. And part of the problem is they just showed how ignorant they are of science. Yes, 5 justices of the Supreme Court, Dave Price just called you ignorant. Okay, and here's why. Part of this is not not just masking, although that's very important. Part of this is not, time is also a factor, and composition. So how many people, Brian, do you know, spend 2 hours getting a bottle of whiskey out of a liquor store?
None.
Right. How many people do you think might hold a 2-hour wedding ceremony? Could be, right?
Could
What?
be.
Yeah.
Well, the actual
that's-
ceremony is
No, the whole time when you're
right.
inside and all that. I mean, that's it. Well, again, you don't have to be a scientist to understand this. How many people in the Biden campaign that we know of, and I mean, there could be a couple secret ones, but how many people got the virus? Not many. What was the difference? Social distance, masking, not inside that much, if inside limited. How many people got it at the White House? What was the difference? Inside, non-masked,
Well,
kinds of things.
look,
And
just
what
about
the
everyone
Supreme-
did.
Right.
About
Here's
everyone
the thing.
did. The only
And
problem
get off that
is
point
they
for a minute.
survived it, which makes you wonder if they were
No,
getting,
Brian, get back. You're going on to that. Get
stem
back to this
cell
point. The
shot
point
into
is,
them.
the Supreme Court just said it's okay to have large gatherings without masks
Right.
in the church, and then come back and go back into your families and your communities. Now,
Right.
if they wanted to go in there and have no mask and never leave, I'm all for that, right? I'm all for that. But the moment you step back out of that church, you're a member of a community. You're not a member of that religion. And I
So
think
how was
this-
that any different, Dave, than
What?
what Sagan was talking about back during the Dark Ages? You know, it's basically a
absolutely
modern
not.
version
Why-
of the
why-
same
of course it's
bullshit.
not. It's not. Of course, it's the same bullshit.
And the
Because,
problem is,
listen,
Dave, is it not the moderate? Since it's really a Christian nation, isn't it the moderate
it
Christians who
isn't
say?
a Christian nation. The myth is that it's a Christian nation. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, my problem is not the evangelicals or not the Orthodox Jews. It's the ones who are, kind of sane, but they say, just let them do what they want.
Here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen.
That's the problem.
Here's the thing. You can be a great person and be a Christian. There's no question in that mind. In fact, I'll take that a step further. If you eliminate everything in the Bible and just follow Jesus's words, whether he was real or a myth, you're going to be a really good person. And you're going to be a
Some
really good member.
kudos from Osama there, Dave.
Well, but you also get this, right? Okay. Let's attack the Bible now. Hell, I haven't attacked that for a while. Let's go after that
Good.
bad boy.
It needs
Now,
it.
Here's the thing. The Bible consists of 2 books, really. There's the Old Testament and the New Testament. And there's some carryover characters, but for the most part, and I've read the Bible, yes, and I've studied it in theology classes. So I'm not speaking as somebody who's completely ignorant. I'm not a religious scholar. But if you let the Old Testament basically reads like it was a lot of laws, right? And the New Testament came along and said, those laws were pretty good back then, right? But it's time for some new things. And that's what Jesus represented. And they don't call it Mosinity from, or whatever. They call it Christianity. It comes from Jesus Christ. So the idea of it is Christians are supposed to follow Jesus Christ, right? Well, there are people who do that. There are. But there are a hell of a lot of churches and Christians who don't. I don't know if you saw, I just picked that as funny. I'm going to get it wrong. So somebody who read it, I posted it. It was just nothing I wrote. What was it? It wasn't zombies. What was it? Transgender something mutant hordes released by Biden. Well, yeah. And this was from a guy who professes to be a minister, a man of God. Come on, man. Let me have some of that shit you're smoking or taking if you believe that stuff, right? So, and of course, once you criticize the Bible, oh my God, right? What I'm saying is there are good things to follow in the Bible. But the same reason, and it works for me, and I will swear it will work for everybody, don't necessarily join a group.
Oh, Dave, we just
Yes.
got a message in from Jesus Christ. He says your pants are too tight.
Well, Jesus, Christos, you know, I guess I'm going to play that then. According to some religious figures, it's your fault because I have no control, and you and the big man and the Holy Spirit are controlling it all up there. So, Jesus, either reduce my waist or expand my pants, I guess, which is a ridiculous way of saying. Which is yeah, God is the sound people make. There you are, Edward Abbey. Of course, Osama. But see, the problem becomes, Brian, and this, it does piss me off, okay? And I don't get pissed off about too much, is I am willing, no, that sounds so condescending. No, I accept the fact that a person can be a Christian and be a good person. I believe that to be true. But so many who profess to be Christians cannot accept the fact that an atheist or an agnostic or a Muslim or a Jew or a Presbyterian, if they're a Baptist, can be a good Christian. No, they take it even further, can even be a good person. And that's what belonging to a group does. It reduces your mind, right? You get a spokesman. The Pope's a pretty good guy now. I like the Pope now, man. I'd sit down and drink some tea with him.
I don't think some of the people around the Vatican like him, or
and that's why I do like him. You're exactly right.
Right.
Now, what I do find interesting is, and it wasn't timing, it's just coincidence. And sometimes evil's timing is really bad. The day that was released, while the Supreme Court was releasing that, the Pope was basically saying the complete opposite, right? That we do have, that as a Christian, you do have a responsibility to community. And that I liked his wording. It wasn't that the law exceeds God's word, but God's word is in the law, which I thought was very well placed, right? Let's take phone from Anthony. You can be godlike or Jesus-like, but you're still only an ordinary person with very many issues. Yeah. Brian, I want to do another story here. Just real quickly, I'm just thinking of, it's just funny. We need a humorous moment. That's what I do on the show.
Why not?
I'm not going to name names because I don't want to embarrass anyone. There was a point, as Brian, as you know, when I was teacher, most people know that. And one of my roles as a teacher outside the classroom was I was very active in, depending on your view, the Teachers Association or the Teachers Union. I never, some people say, we were a union, okay? And all that's good and bad with that. And one of the things I enjoyed doing, and I thought I could be helpful with it, was I would represent teachers up to the point where they needed a real lawyer. And that was my role, and that's kind of what I did. And this one time, in this one case, the person later was found guilty, and he did commit the crimes. His teaching certificate, as it should have been, was taken away. But in the case, he pled guilty. Now, the interesting thing about a pardon, back to Trump, everything ties into Trump. If he's pardoned, do you know he has to plead guilty? Do you know that with a pardon?
Yes, I do know that.
A pardon is not. You're guilty, and we pardon you of the crime.
And he can't plead the fifth.
Now that's an interesting concept. Would that disbar him from running for president? But what happened was, so this gentleman who was going to take the plea bargain, it was 364 days in jail and the loss of his teacher's license. And I thought that was extremely appropriate for what had happened. But because he had to go to court and had to recount what he did, because that's like a pardon, even though it's a sentence, right? And so he did. And I still have a lot of friends because of my years of reporting who were in the police department and in the courthouse. And I won't say which side, called me and said, Dave, you got to get down here. I said, what? He said, just come down here. We got something you want to read. So I said, okay. So I come down there and said, look, if you go in that room, there's something there. I want you to read it. Not from us. That's the way it works, kind of, So I go in. And it was a transcript of the pleading. And I thought, well, this is interesting. And of course, my name was mentioned, but that wasn't the funny part. Now, court stenographers are amazing. If any of you haven't been to court, they get it verbatim.
They get it. And they will stop your ass when they don't
they
have it
get
right.
They're excellent. Right?
They rule the court, not the judge.
Well, I mean, but that's because that's the legal
Right.
record.
You've got to stop when they say
But
stop.
this one, I guess this day, I don't know if it was a he or she misheard or whatever. And my last name is Price, Price. So in the first reference, I assume they said, David Price did such and such, right? Well, she or he misheard it. And so in my first reference, I was listed as David Christ. Christ. And for the rest of that record, it said, and Christ said, and Christ did. So I think that maybe, if Donald Trump is the Antichrist, maybe we're somewhat related, but I'm on the good side because the state of New Jersey in legal documents recognizes me as the Christ. That's what I was referred to.
Well, I've said Jesus Christ so many times.
What he says is Jesus Christ. Not that one.
Jesus Christ, Dave.
I've heard that all my life, No, but it was just, my point is, that was just a little humor side. But the thing is,
I'm glad your last name wasn't fuck.
Well, I could do some people who name Richard Hard. We won't do that though. But anyway, the idea is this, right? We're back to the court now, and then we're back to Trump. Okay, so what's going on here? The court now is clearly 5-4 conservative, 6-3 on paper, but definitely 5-4 in this case. We now see. I think they made a bad ruling. I think they made a bad ruling for every American, because I think they said religion trumps science. That's basically what they said. They said religion trumps law. That's basically what they said. And now we get back to the Trump himself. And who put 3 of those votes on that court? Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Now, before we put all the blame on Mr. Trump, we have to look at the GOP hierarchy. The story has not been refuted, so I believe it to be true. I'm sure you heard about it. While she was dying, or within 2 minutes after her death, Mitch McConnell said, "Let's move, Donald." Now, I'm sure Donald had it in mind, right? But certainly Mr. McConnell. And if there is, and I don't believe there is, but if there is some kind of afterlife where you're punished for being bad and rewarded for being good, I don't think disregarding the last wish of a dying woman is going to give you too many brownie points to get through those gates to where the land is paved with gold and whatever. The other thing I would say, sort of as a joke, but this, think about this, okay? If hell, as some religions have set it up, is a place of eternal torment, right, Brian? That's what you hear. First of all, it will not be hot. It would be cold. Cold is Dante was right as he looked at that through literature. It would probably be very cold. But anyway, if it's going to be eternal torment, I'm pretty sure Donald Trump's going to go there. And
well, even if you think about that, that's the ridiculousness.
Well, let me be ridiculous here for a moment. I am being ridiculous.
Eternal torment for somebody who causes even Trump wouldn't deserve eternal torment.
But
maybe just a lifetime.
There are and there are people who would believe that I would be there too. But I guarantee you that Donald Trump has saved me from going to hell. Gotcha.
And he's got to go.
Here's the thing, and why I can say that is, if I were in hell and he were in hell, right, and I saw him being tormented, I would be so damn happy that they would have to send me upstairs because it wouldn't be. That's the idea. Look, and last thing, and this is really to piss Christians off, the bad Christians, not the good ones, is we're talking about myths all night tonight, right, Brian? Myths.
It's interesting because. First of all, for whatever reason, George hasn't made it tonight.
Right.
We've gone in a different direction, but this is kind of interesting because it was during the 1980s and early 90s that I watched a lot of Joseph Campbell. I had tons of video. So it's gone to a direction that I kind of liked. It was.
Well, I'll tell you what else was good about it is the fact that I think, let me attack education. I haven't attacked that tonight. Modern American education is wonderful for producing factory workers that we don't need anymore. And it's terrible for everything else. Now, what I mean, part of it is it compartmentalized learning. Okay. Kids would come to my class for 40 minutes and they really believed that's the only time they needed to think or consider English. And then they moved on to math class, but like tonight, it's all one. It's all one. Donald Trump, Miss America, the world, religion, and you got to go through it all. Now, you never get good at all of them, right? But if you feel like somewhat accomplished in the field of language, then you find somebody who's good in science and you bring it all
Well, see,
together.
I think the greatness about good teachers in general, it doesn't have to be education. If you look at how we learn slowly, or the slowest when we learn from our own mistakes. It takes us a long time. But we learn most quickly when we can learn from others' mistakes. And the good teacher can say, okay, look, you've got your choice here. You want to pay the hard way, or you want to do it the easy way? And in education, I think as a teacher, whatever you decide to do, however you want to deliver that, you have to have somebody buy into the idea that, your own stupidity is going to kill you if you don't take that advice and you become committed to something. Right. If not just the idea that you learn more quickly from the mistakes of others rather than from yourself. Am I wrong?
Oh, no, I think you're, you and I, and we get millions of here, learning. I mean, it's all this, but I think basically there are a few things, and I'm going to bring it back. I still try to get us back to Trump. So I would ask every American tonight this question. I think most Americans, Brian, would you agree, know what team teaching is? But would you explain it to someone who doesn't know what team teaching is? Basically, it's the rudiments. What is it? How many people in the class?
As I know it, is a collaboration between teachers, usually within your own department. So you share your ideas, and there's a synergistic effect where when you don't simply rely on your own ideas, you benefit as a teacher. That's the basic idea behind it.
You can't bring a whole department into one class, but you can have, they call it team teaching when two people are in there, correct? In other words, it's the same process brought down, right? So you're interchanging. So I ask every American tonight this question. And 80 some million will agree with me, and 73 million won't, and the rest are out partying and they don't care. If you're going to have two teachers teach your children, right? Would you rather those teachers be Joe and Jill Biden, or would you rather those teachers be Donald and Melania Trump? And in a way, how you answer that question, of course, it says a lot about you, but it would also say a lot about how you view your leaders, because in that classroom, whether you want to be or not, I always treated my classroom as I was not superior, but I was the greatest of equals, because if no other thing, I'd studied whatever I was teaching more than they had, and I was older. But I do think with teaching, a lot of it does come to character. The idea, leadership is not issuing orders and having them followed by fear, like Donald Trump has been.
It's being able to bring people along
and
buy into what you're saying.
So I think, again, to me, that question phrased that way is a no-brainer. And notice I didn't say, would you rather be taught? Because again, I may be wrong on this, but I think most of us care more for our children, or in my case now, my grandchildren, than we do for ourselves. We've talked about this over the years, Brian. What would you die for? It can change in a moment, but I do know.
And there are plenty of things we would die for.
Yeah, I mean, I can put some names: Judy Price, Michael and Shannon Price, Audrey and Ellen Price.
And maybe
that would just be it. I mean,
there could be people you don't even know at any one moment, given that situation, that you would, if you saw a 5-year-old kid you didn't know getting beaten up,
Brian, I agree.
you would do it.
I'm saying they're the 5 I know going in. There
Right.
may be 500 million,
Right.
right?
I wanted to
But
clarify
what I-
that so
what I-
people
what I-
didn't think that you simply would say, okay.
Oh, no.
Judy First,
Well,
right.
thank you for clearing that up, because sometimes I don't make myself so clear. But what I would say is, I would never want to be president of the United States. My God. The first time, Brian, I don't think I've ever told you this. The first time in the Atlantic City Press, I was just a reporter there. And we were in a bureau. A bureau is a group of reporters that doesn't work at the main office. And the boss came up to me, who was the bureau chief, and said, look, I'm going on vacation. I'm going to name you bureau chief. I said, I don't want to be bureau chief. He said, I'm going to name you bureau chief. I said, I want to be bureau chief. So he named me bureau chief, and I put myself on vacation for 2 weeks because I didn't want to be bureau chief. I'm not that kind of a leader. But I would say this, just if by me naming those 5 people, I might be better president than Donald Trump. Why? If you asked Donald Trump and you were honest, who would you die for? I don't think he's going to die for Eric. I don't think he's going to die for Don. I don't think he's going to die for the Georgetown law student. I don't even know if he knows Barron's middle name. I don't think he's going to die for Melania because he'll pick up somebody else. Maybe Ivanka, maybe. And I think that's another thing in America, in these myths, we forget, or we have the wrong idea of a leader. Ladies and gentlemen, what is it? Preaching to the choir, they say tonight, I know. But I hope that someday somebody sees this who doesn't agree with me and will pick up the phone or email me or something, or they come on this show. And got to kind of bring it back where I actually was earlier. Whether you like the president of the United States or whether you don't, you have to agree on this. And I never once wavered for this. Donald Trump, for 4 years, was the president of the United States. I think it is clear, and I'm not speaking on my own, more than 100 historians, 2 years, well, a little bit more than 2 years into his presidency, already found him to be the worst president in the history. And heaven or hell help us if we ever get anybody worse than him. However, he was the president. And what boggles my mind, go back to those 80 million and those 73 million. The choice was Joe Biden and the choice was Donald Trump. And for the life of me, I've studied it, I've looked at it. I don't see, if you can put aside party, right? If you put aside party, how in any way Donald Trump makes a better leader than Joe Biden. I just don't see it. Now, I'm not going to convince any of those 70.
That was such a great post.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, Osama, I've seen that. It really is true. Osama, why don't you come on? No, seriously, why don't we? If you like,
Right,
this,
Osama, we've never had you
here's the
on.
thing. Now, here's what I like to
Are
do.
you allowed to
No,
leave
if
your
you
other
like
show?
That's like my passion. Before Trump, I mean, I just consumed.
We'll have you play your keyboard.
We can argue, not argue. We can discuss. Was it 1984? Was it *Handmaid's Tale*? Was it *Brave New World*? Was it *We*, the great Russian dystopian novel? Which one it was. So to finish my thought, though,
you're welcome to come on, Osama. I mean, don't worry.
I'm not going to change those 73 million people, Brian. I'm not.
Hey, look, we got some. Maybe next show we'll have Osama on.
I'm not.
It's always a good conversation. I've always talked with him. I've seen him a million times.
Would you pay attention to what I'm thinking and quit worrying about what happens the next show?
We got 6 minutes and 5 seconds left. Okay.
Working with a child who has an attention span.
I'll send you a link
negative-
next time, Osama. Okay.
Are you done having your Kumbaya
No,
moment
actually,
with
1 second. Osama, just
Gee,
leave an
God
email
almighty.
or PM me somewhere on Facebook or wherever, and we'll just send you a link one time. Forget about
Ladies and
Dave. He's unimportant.
you see what I work with.
Okay.
It's amazing. I mean,
We
you know,
Brian
Brian is
degenerates at the end of the show.
Brian is to hosting a show what Donald Trump is to the
Hey,
presidency.
listen, I'm going to promote your new shows, folks.
Not yet. Not
Okay, well,
yet.
hold it. Well, I want to. I'm getting yelled at. Okay,
Who's yelling at you, Brian? Would
look,
that be your wife?
he's got an exciting first show. It's going to be about his new pair of Florsheim shoes.
Do you know what,
kidding.
Brian?
Okay,
A real speaker, which you aren't, could do an exciting program. And also, not only could they do an exciting program on Florsheim shoes, my friend, but they get it on time.
Do you
which
think you could do
haven't
that?
Done the whole time we've been doing this. Saba, you're on. You and Brian will work it out. Okay. So back to this thing. Here's the problem, Brian. This is my last words tonight. I said again, going back to the beginning of the show, Joe Biden will be our next president. The country will be in worse shape when he takes it over than it is tonight. Donald Trump will assure that. We will all have to work and help make America better, but 80 million of us are still going to be in opposition and divided to 73 million. So the question is, let's not necessarily look to unite. I don't think that's going to happen. I think let's look to maintain, and really the cultivation, ladies and gentlemen, is not with the 73 million. I don't really think we have to worry to hold on to our 80 million. It's to expand and get the people who didn't vote active, and hopefully they're active on our side. But if they choose the other side, so be it. We can't have, Brian, and be a successful country this few, even though everybody's running, oh, this is so great, it's so great. Well, yeah, it's better than normal, the amount, right? But we need to get more people involved, or any progress we make can always be flipped by those 73 million if they get up to the 80 million. Right. That's it for me tonight. Thanks for having me on, Brian. Thanks for anybody who listens. Brian is also going to have a new show.
I am.
A lot of time, yeah, you are.
Apparently now I am. After I mentioned Florsheim shoes.
Well, I just want to explain that show before I go off.
Now he's going
to very big show for Brian. My wife watches HGTV a lot because she's into design. That's why she watches it. And of course, I make fun of her because there's one show on there. I don't know if any of you watch it. It's Love It or List It. And I said, couldn't they have another option like Loath? I don't know, something, but they don't. Well, Brian's going to have a 2-option show, but he gets confused about this sometimes. He knows he has to go to the bathroom, but he's not sure he has to do. So his show is going to be, is it 1 or is it 2? And Brian, and what he'll do is he's so confident, he's going to let you vote. Should he do number 1 or should he do number 2? Your turn, Brian.
Okay. Well, I don't know. We were doing okay until you just shit the bed. Okay.
Well, that's what we hope you don't do. We hope if you have to do a number 2, we get to the bathroom and we don't vote on a number 1.
Well, Dave knows this is, I mean, I'm actually sharing something I shouldn't share. But and I'm getting messages from everybody. Joey says my next show will be in the bathroom. No,
it will be, Joe.
You know, I always used to go to work at around 5 or 10 after 7, ready to go and be there on time. But for some reason, before I'm ready to leave, I get anxietal and I have to go to the bathroom. And it's always at 7:03. And I mean, this has been going on since like 1984. And I don't know what it is with my body, but as soon as it hits 7:03, We should have a show. You know, it was like 90250 or whatever it is. We should have Brian 703.
Brian, that's a much more personal thing, Brian. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like
I
to.
thought you were
I have
done.
his address. Just text me, email me. I'll give you Brian's address, and we'll all go there at 703
Dave,
and help
you are
our friend out.
You are the king of scatological philosophy.
good at
Okay, you're really good at that.
I know.
Yes.
I know that.
All right. So anyway, Dave, again, I'm sorry we didn't have our special guest, George Lennon. I'm sure he had his reasons that he couldn't make it. But we'll have him on. We will. But it turned out to be a pretty interesting show, folks. We covered a lot of real estate. We started off talking about Trump and things like that. But we covered philosophy, which is what Dave and I normally talk about. At least pre-2016. Oh my God, 2016. So, yeah, interesting show, Dave. At least from my perspective, I think it was well worthwhile. And I did have a monkey with the graphics, which I don't like doing too much, but it's working out. I think in general, it's working out, and I even see for my mistakes, like having a specific screen for comments. Next week, it'll be a little bit better and easier. So it's getting better. And Osama, I don't know what you want to do, but I don't know if you're on Facebook. Send me an email address or whatever, and I can send you a link through email or through Messenger and Facebook, whatever is easier for you. So, yeah, I would really like to have you on, really. Dave's a keyboardist, too. Good keyboardist. So, yeah, we'll talk notes. Okay. We'll talk about the
Turn into a
Dorian
music
scale.
show, right? Yeah,
We'll talk about the Dorian scale for 2 hours.
Dorian Giorgio scale. I didn't know
What's
she
your
had a
favorite
scale.
note, Dave?
My favorite note?
The double E flat?
No, you know what my favorite note is? It's the one that I sing in often. H flat. I sing in that often.
By the way, Osama, my email is just my name, Brian Weinstein @comcast.net. And you're good to go. So you see my name there. Just add @comcast.net. You're good to go. And then I'll send it back. And he just said, great show, dudes. Thank you, Osama. Really,
Thank
it's
you,
always good to
Osama,
see you.
very much.
Anthony, take notes. Cool. Anthony,
Thank
great
you,
to
Anthony.
see you.
That's very nice.
We've seen Keith. Hope you're doing well. I know you've had some,
Yeah.
tough things to deal with. Joey, you're a troublemaker. Always. Ever since
And
you were
Joey,
in school
you know
and
I like
outside of school.
troublemakers. So you're my guy.
Joey causes me more anxiety than any human being out there. He's a good guy, though. Okay? So, Joey Fulcher. And Sandy showed up. That was great. And, well, anyway, thank you to everybody who showed up. CB. It was cool seeing CB also. And if I missed your name, we apologize, both David and I. So anyway, Dave, a good show. I liked it.
Yeah,
And
I had fun.
yeah, it was a lot of
it's-
fun.
We said initially, and it's not for everybody, right? It's two people talking, and I kind of like that. I mean, we have some expertise, but it's not like Rachel Maddow and Lawrence O'Donnell in there, but it's two people I think who relate maybe more to people. I guess what I'm trying to say, I'm not saying it very well. Probably more people are like us than they are as talented as Rachel Maddow and Lawrence O'Donnell. I mean, they're just
Right.
they're
You're not
brilliant.
them.
And Chris Hayes, throw him
With
in
the
there.
poor man's
And
Lawrence O'Donnell and
throw
Chris
Brian
Hayes.
Williams in there. I mean, they're all good. I mean, they're great. And that's not what this show is. It's a chance, and for just two guys to get together.
Dave,
What?
I think there is an advantage to watching this at times because, we're more like the common people, and
Well,
we are having that in exchange with the people, whereas, O'Donnell and Maddow only really have the exchange with the guests. So we're on the ground, and I'm sure if Lawrence O'Donnell watched this, to watch the echo here, or Rachel Maddow, they'd say, hey, 2 thumbs up.
trying.
This wouldn't make it on
They're trying.
MSNBC, but you know what? We get to Rome. You know what I mean? Eventually.
At some point, they just get there faster because
They
they
get
have
there
better
a hell of a lot
direction,
faster.
they're smarter.
Because like, that's the one thing you can say about Dave and me is that we eventually learn from our own mistakes, not the others. We're the slow
There's
learners.
there's so many
Right.
I make to learn from.
I'm still trying to figure out. Dave, it's good seeing
Speaking
you.
of mistakes,
I'm gonna-
you seem to be taking a long time to get this show over.
well, it's a
Is
Jewish
that a mis-
goodbye. I can't
Oh,
get
is
it
that
out of my
what-
blood.
Oh,
you know?
No, we talked about you. I hope you're not inviting 15,000 people in without masks
Well,
to do your
that's an
Jewish
Orthodox
goodbye.
Jewish goodbye. And by now I'm starting to lose my vibe. But if you notice, we do have that. And if that's an indication, you're even more Jewish than I am, because it takes you twice as long as me to exit a show.
I've been done 25 minutes ago.
Until I mention Florsheim shoes.
Well, you should just learn not to say something stupid, but
Well,
that's just inherent in your
you
business.
like when I say that.
Well, I
know
just
you.
wait for it. It's inevitable, Brian.
Right.
It's inevitable.
All right. Listen, I'm going to send us off with an outro. And if this works right, you'll see Sundown in Fortescue, New Jersey at Delaware Bay. See ya. I think. Please work. What scene is this?
Ladies
I'm
and gentlemen, this is
clicking.
known as hell now. Brian and I
D'un lion, il y a une jolie fille. D'un lion, il y a une jolie fille. Elle est jolie, parfaite en beauté, qu'elle a elle a charmé le cœur d'un grenadier. Bon grenadier, amène-moi dans ta chambre. Bon grenadier, amène-moi dans ta chambre. Oui, dans ma chambre, je t'emmènerai et je te donnerai. Et je te donnerai le cœur d'un grenadier. Et l'autre amant qui est à la porte qui écoute. Et l'autre amant qui est à la porte qui écoute. Croisant ses bras, jetant la vue au ciel, se dit grand Dieu. Se dit grand Dieu que je suis malheureux. D'avoir aimé une aussi jolie fille, et à présent il faut l'abandonner. Oh oui, grand Dieu, grand Dieu, oh oui, grand Dieu, que je suis malheureux.